Okay, it's 7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We've got a good crowd tonight. I'm sure everyone is here to hear the Earth Day proclamation. So, we actually have 3 proclamations and then a presentation. And I know a lot of you are here, I assume, for committee recommendation number 1. And we'll probably have discussion and everything with that and public comment right before that item. So if you want to hold off on during public comment time, we can wait until that item comes up. So proclamations. Okay, Earth Day. Whereas the first Earth Day was celebrated with the goal of inspiring environmental awareness and encouraging the conservation, protection, and appreciation of the nation's resources. And whereas Earth Day was created to allow us to reflect on the health of our planet and the importance of environmental stewardship, safeguarding our planet and its natural sources to ensure we and future generations will have a clean, healthy world in which to live, work, and recreate. And whereas Earth Day is celebrated annually to celebrate the beauty of our planet, recommit to actions to promote a healthy environment and to maintain a peaceful, just, and sustainable world. And whereas Earth Day is an opportunity to renew America's commitment to preserving and protecting the state of our environment through community service and responsible stewardship. And whereas the theme for Earth Day 2023 is Invest in Our Planet, which highlights the importance of dedicating our time, resources, and energy to solving climate change and other issues. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim Earth Day April 22nd, 2023 as Earth Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and urge all citizens to celebrate and commit to protect and enhance the long-term health of the natural environment and community. Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. Whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and urge all citizens to celebrate and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And we have one more. The Athena Club. Yes, Nita.
Shall I come forward?
Absolutely. Come forward, please. Here.
Thank you.
Whereas the General Federation of Women's Clubs is an international women's organization dedicated to community improvement by enhancing the lives of others through volunteer service. Whereas the Athena Club of Gardner, Kansas has been a part of the General Federation of Women's Clubs since 1923 and celebrating their 100th birthday. And whereas the Athena Club created the first library in Johnson County and worked with the Gardner Grange to place a branch of the Johnson County Library in Gardner. And whereas the Athena Club continues to work with and support the veteran community through the American Legion, VFW, and Leavenworth, VA. Whereas the Athena Club supports Safe Home, Operation Smile, Pepper International, and many others. Whereas the Athena Club provides a $500 scholarship to a graduating Gardner Edgerton High School student annually. Whereas Club women represent the full spectrum of lifestyles of women today, all interested in self-improvement as well as community improvement. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2023 as the Athena Club of Gardner Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and and recognize their efforts for the residents of the city of Gardner and beyond.
Thank you.
That's all the probations. We have next outside agency budget requests. Matt?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The city contributes funding to several organizations that provide services to Gardner residents. The purpose of the presentation tonight is to summarize the 2024 funding requests for the governing body. My presentation tonight will also include an update on the Economic Development Fund and the Special Drug and Alcohol Fund, which provide most of the funding for these outside agencies. The City of Gardner uses a biennial budgeting process. Last year, the City Council conditionally approved the 2024 budget and associated outside agency funding requests. The 2024 requests have not changed since last year, except for the one shown in red text. Johnson County is requesting an increase in utility assistance program from $25,000 to $30,000. They're also requesting $5,000 in new funding for our rental assistance program. The county is experiencing larger requests for assistance. These contributions will directly serve Gardner residents. The Economic Development Fund started the year with a fund balance of $330,000. Its annual revenues are about $302,000, and we have programmed expenditures in 23 and 24 of around $250,000. We expect the fund balance to continue to grow in the future because the revenues exceed the planned expenditures. The Special Alcohol and Drug Fund is funded by a third of our basically special alcohol tax revenues. That amounts to about $58,000 annually. We currently have a fund balance of about $160,000 and planned expenditures of $30,000 each year. This fund balances are expected to grow going forward in the future. Please note that Joanne Haworth, Johnson County's outreach manager, is on Zoom tonight to help answer any questions you might have regarding the county's new requests. Greg Marnett from Southwest Johnson County EDC will be at the next meeting to provide an update on the EDC's work plan. And Gardner Chamber President Jason Lieb is here tonight and has a short update for the City Council regarding the Chamber's work plan.
Thank you, Matt. Jason, did you want to come forward?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Happy to provide you with an update on the work plan that we agreed to back in January. We had, I believe, a total of 16 items that are listed in that work plan. I won't touch on all of them, but I will hit some highlights on a number of those this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to work with the city on a number of regards. Primarily starting with a couple of things under our growth and exposure section and then our collaboration section. Ribbon cuttings is one of the primary activities we work with the council and staff on to set up. All of you are familiar faces at those, so we appreciate you turning out for those as well. We've had half a dozen just since the beginning of the year already. So at that rate, we were looking at 24, 25 throughout the year. Having them throughout the winter is impressive, and hardy souls that are coming out to support our local new businesses. Our new resident bag program is continuing. We've had dozens delivered so far this year. We have another round to go out this coming Wednesday. We work with the community policing officer on that. I know he is on paternity leave, so we're handling that internally right now, but it's great to work with him. And chamber members love being able to provide those. We get lots of positive feedback from the residents that receive those. A relocation guide. I think I had mentioned the last time I was here, but what had before been basically an Excel spreadsheet has now been kind of spruced up, a little more aesthetically pleasing to view. So when we have those calls or emails and people are looking for that relocation information, something we have available to send out directly, and it looks a little nicer at the moment. One item, our community profile, that is something that we are continuing to work on. We are looking to, one of the other things we do obviously is the GE magazine. We are meeting with the publisher in about 2 weeks, and we're looking to expand that magazine this year, upping hopefully 6 pages added to that. And so our discussion will be, is that something where we can have kind of a tear out section in the middle that will be that community profile, so that we can print those separately, have those available separately, send out, make available to city and staff as well. And if that's something that won't work with that publisher, then we'll work on creating that document separately. But the success of the magazine, we actually did not have enough room for all of the businesses that wanted to place ads this year, so that's why we're looking to expand it. Marketing support, so we have a bi-weekly newsletter. We have a city-specific section, so we're frequently using that to market city events, particularly Parks and Rec events. So we're trying to promote those throughout tourism. There's a number of other organizations we belong to that have regular destination marketing opportunities, so we're using that from combination of other businesses in the area that are providing tourism opportunities as well as city projects. Business directory, I know last fall we provide that list of database to city staff as requested. I've already mentioned the magazine, including a community profile there. Networking events. Our events are a big driver of what we do for both citizens and businesses. We do make those open to everyone that wishes to attend. We are wrapping up kind of our big spring season, so I'm looking forward to, after our golf tournament and the citywide garage sale in a few weeks, having a couple of months of less frequent events to get some of these other projects kicked off, including the magazine and the community profile. But we've had incredibly successful attendance and successful events in the, I guess, 10 months now that I've been with the chamber. As far as community leadership program, I think I've mentioned before, that is something that I feel is near and dear to myself, and so we do expect to begin the first class in 2024, have a planning session scheduled with the other Johnson County area chambers in July to work on the combined events that we do for County Day, State Day, and Metro-wide days. So once that schedule is built out, we'll be able to complete the rest of our schedule and our process. We've also been working with Kansas Leadership Center to develop the leadership training portion of that program as well. With regard to the Community Foundation, we've met with a couple of organizations that provide assistance in those regards. We actually have a second meeting. We have a regional conference coming up at the beginning of May, so we'll be meeting with them at the beginning of May and hopefully be ready to move that forward, subject to my board's approval. And tourism, I've touched on that a little bit, but I would say the biggest success we've had most recently, we had the director of Travel Kansas out in February to work through the process of how their travel industry listings are provided both on their website and in their physical magazine guide. Prior to that meeting, we had, I think, 13 destinations listed here in Gardner. We have now increased that to almost 50. So any unique tourism destination related entities, we've created those profiles for them, and so they're now being featured on the Visit Kansas website. A variety of other pieces. I hope everyone in the room, but many of you in front of me here will be at our State of the City luncheon, which is upcoming this Thursday. So we're looking forward to hearing from Mayor Winters and seeing all of you there. At the moment, we have registration is closed, and we have just over 100 attendees planned at this point. So looking forward to that event on Thursday. And a variety of other miscellaneous things that were happening. But I know we provided a letter of support with regards to the sewage plant funding that was upcoming. We've also worked with local business on a tourism grant. It's the Kansas Sprint Grant, so a tourism-related opportunity to grow a local business and bring some additional tourists here. So we're waiting on the response from the state on that one. As also required, I participated in all of the EDAC, Economic Development Advisory Committee meetings that we've had. And I know Mr. Martinet is not here this evening, but I believe on Wednesday we have our next meeting there. So working with him to keep and maintain the businesses that we have here in Gardner. So that is my update, but I stand for any questions.
Council, any questions with Jason?
Okay.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
doesn't have a scheduled presentation, but she wanted to be available in case you had any questions on the requests.
Any questions? Howard?
Tim, sure. Can we go back to the slide that shows all the cash outlays? So is the rental assistance program similar to the utility assistance program that essentially it's coming directly back to our residents that utilize it?
Joanne, are you available?
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble hearing. Hi, thank you.
Hello?
I couldn't really hear really well. I'm trying to adjust my volume. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. So the utility billing service fund that does the utility assistance program, essentially that money comes back to Gardner residents. Is
Yes.
the rental assistance program the same methodology?
Yes, it is. It would be strictly for Gardner residents. It follows pretty much all of the same guidelines, eligibility guidelines we have in place for utility assistance. 200% federal poverty level guidelines, just like utilities. With the rent assistance, it does require a current lease. So we do ask for a lease, and we ask for a statement from the landlord of what the balance of rent that is owed. It requires all the same stuff we collect for utilities.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Joanne. All right. We'll move next to public comments. And members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's a 5-minute time clock on your left. No profanity, no personal attacks. With that being said, come forward and state your name and address for the record. The podium is now open. And again, if this is regards to Pinnacle and Fairfield, we'll have that coming up later.
When do I start?
Start now, just if you
Start.
start with your name and address for the record.
My name is Eric Arnold. I live at 294 West Westhoff Place. I'm here tonight to address the Parks and Rec Department. I volunteer as an assistant coach to a team of 6 and 7-year-old boys in the Parks and Rec soccer program here in Gardner. Last Thursday, I had a disappointing encounter with the recreation supervisor of Gardner Parks and Rec. I had just completed our setup for practice when the recreation supervisor approached me with a very rude and unprofessional manner, telling me that our team would need to leave the field so that the refs can train, which actually turned into their own soccer scrimmage. The next morning, Friday the 14th, the recreation supervisor proceeded to email coaches stating that nobody is to be practicing at Celebration Park, and those who were found practicing at Celebration Park would suffer the consequences of having the Parks and Rec Department deny their reimbursement. This is blatant hypocrisy at its finest. Rules for thee, but not for me. The problem in all of this is the fact that somewhere along the line, some folks seem to have forgotten that Celebration Park is public property and is funded by the taxpayer. Unfortunately, you don't have the right to kick me off of public property unless I've committed a crime or in violation of the Gardner Municipal Code 12.30.01 that clearly defines the hours open as 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Now, unless I've missed something, the opinion of a Parks and Rec employee who represents the city does not dictate what I, my team, or any other citizen can and cannot do on public property, or when we can and cannot be on public property. That is our land, and we will use it as we see fit, so long as we are within the guidelines of the law. You do not get to dictate that. In regards to the email, I would find myself to be highly ashamed to be part of a city government that allows their employees to threaten to withhold financial reimbursement from those who volunteer to coach our children's sports if they do not comply with their demands. The Parks and Rec attempt at taking an authoritarian role does not impress me, nor does it intimidate me. Parks and Rec is part of a local government, and therefore their job is to support and serve, not dictate and threat. Now is the time that the City Council can come in and help the Parks and Rec Department open their eyes to that realization and learn their place and role within this government. Neither I or other coaches will tolerate such behavior from the Parks and Rec Department moving forward. If this behavior continues, we are prepared to find alternative programs. This is the bottom line. The fields at Celebration Park are public property that are maintained and properly marked for playing and teaching the game of soccer. As volunteer coaches, we are tasked with teaching these children the game of soccer as well as ensuring their safety. I will not put my team onto a field that I do not deem fit, as most of what I've seen throughout the city are unmaintained fields with divots, holes, and no markings. It is essential for these children to learn the game of soccer on an actual soccer field to get a true understanding of what the markings on the field mean, how to navigate those markings, and the rules associated with them. So, is basketball taught on a basketball court? What about hockey? Is it taught in an ice rink? Is baseball not taught on a baseball field? So why does Gardner Parks and Rec Department feel that it is not necessary to teach soccer on a soccer field? So as many of you noticed, I have my son here with me this evening. I feel that this is a perfect opportunity to teach him about local governments and the steps citizens must take when parts of their government start acting outside of their role. My hope is that today my son can see a small part of that and carry that with him as it continues to grow. The other reason why I brought him here with me today is, you want to ask that question? Are you sure? No? You want me to ask? So the second reason I brought him here today, he would like for me to relay a question to you that he has asked me, and frankly, I've had trouble answering it. But the question is, why do the bigger kids get to play on the fields, but we can't? With all of that said, I would like to personally invite every single one of you out to Celebration Park tomorrow at 6 p.m. to support your local youth as we practice the game of soccer. Thank you.
And we've got a couple to read in. I'm sorry, there's more. I apologize.
No, you're okay. Thank you. Sorry. Good evening. My name is Bethany, and my family and I have resided in Gardner since 2019. Our son has played soccer for Gardner Parks and Rec since spring of 2022. When we first enrolled our son in the soccer program, the league was desperately in need of volunteer coaches. Having played soccer myself and having a love for the sport, I signed up and have coached since spring of 2022. I come before you today as a concerned parent and coach. My objective is to spread awareness to the things I've witnessed, and I hope those in front of me today can work with their community to ensure we will see positive change when it comes to player safety, adequate playing fields, sufficient equipment, and equality to every coach. Each season, coaches are sent a list of park suggestions that we're allowed to practice at. Our first season, our team practiced at Sunflower Elementary. Due to the unmarked fields, no goals or nets, large amounts of holes that could cause injury or harm, and field flooding after rain, we changed our practice location the following season. As coaches, we sign a coach's code of ethics. On line 3 of that document, it states, "I will do my best to provide a safe practice and playing situation for my players." It is our responsibility, on top of many others, to ensure the safety of our team and players. How could we possibly keep our team safe when we are practicing on fields that are torn up? Prior to the season starting, I had visited each field, the next season, prior to that season, I had visited each field and found that Madison was our best opportunity at that time. The practice suggestion list that the league sends out is also a sign up that allows other coaches to see when and where other teams are practicing, so there is less conflict. However, not every coach signs up their team's day and time, so if you do declare a designating practicing spot, more than likely you might be running into other practices you were unaware of, which is also what happened to us at Sunflower. The field at Madison Elementary was a small upgrade to what we had been practicing on prior. While we still had unmarked fields and it was also a popular spot for other teams, we at least had goalie nets. Throughout the season, we noticed the field started to dry up and they became increasingly difficult to run on. Over by one goalie net, I had to set a bag in a large hole so that our players wouldn't be injured running by it. Our third season, being this current season, We took the opportunity to survey every park suggested on that list prior to starting our first practice. After doing a tour of the fields, we found that each suggested field had one or more of the following unmarked fields, no goals or goals without nets, flooding on the field after rain, which would cause the fields to get torn up if played on, divots or holes, which could cause harm to players, and any decent field seemed to be a popular choice, which caused high traffic and or conflict for teams to play with necessary tools to coach. I question why some parks are even an option on this list. Wynwood, for example, has no soccer fields or goals even at the park. Sunflower Elementary is also just an open field with no goals or marked fields. Would you send a basketball team to learn the rules of basketball to a blank court with no lines on it? Probably not. They would probably be very confused at their first game. My assumption is that this league feels as if we, as volunteer coaches, only need an open field, 5 soccer balls, and 7 cones to run a successful practice. I have personally spoken to multiple coaches, and just like them, I have also paid for pennies to use during scrimmage, purchased additional cones, and have purchased goalie nets, even though they are a small fraction to the real size. Some coaches mark their own fields, but we have to be open-minded that not all volunteer coaches have the time to go out and mark their fields prior to practice. Recently, an email was sent from Gardner's recreation supervisor that we would be penalized if found playing at Celebration Park. It states if you are found practicing on the Celebration Park soccer fields, you will not get your coach's credit for the current season. In prior seasons, coaches have received similar emails from recreation supervisors, but with a completely different tone. In one email, it states, our park maintenance staff asked that I send out a reminder that we prefer teams to not practice at Celebration Park during the week.
Bethany,
Yes.
I apologize. I have to cut you off.
That's okay.
5 minutes,
Thank you
yeah.
for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Chevatel, and I live at 635 Oak Crest Circle. I'm currently the head coach of 3 teams and assistant coach to a 4th team here at Gardner. My husband, Keith Chevatel, and I have been associated with this league since the fall of 2019. We currently have a 90% return rate each season. Our kids don't just play Gardner Parks and Rec, they're dedicated enough to play in the off-season at Johnson County Park and Rec. We're not a soccer team, we're a soccer family, and we continue to grow. I'm here tonight as a concerned mom, coach, wife, and citizen. I've witnessed this organization's decline over the last 2 years, and I'm disheartened at the lack of response to make a positive change. Tonight I'm here to support the proper ref training, player safety, and the integrity of the volunteer coaches. Over the last several weeks, I have witnessed a lack of support for our refs, a lack of concern for safety for players, and unprofessional behavior of the field supervisor and his staff. This past weekend, we played a game in which we forfeited in the last minutes of the game due to failure to protect our players from the other team. Our head coach continued to plead with the ref to watch players on the opposing team continue to trip our kids and lay them out. After 5 penalties by the same individual on the team, our coach reminded the ref that he had cards in his pocket and that he could use them. The sad part is, the field supervisor was at our field watching the game. Not really watching the game, though. He came over, he high-fived the other coach, fraternized with the parents, joked around, and was laughing on the sideline. This behavior by the supervisor continued even after 2 of my players laid on the field, getting assistance from our coach and their parents as my team took a knee for their fellow teammate. The field supervisor had no concern to come onto the field to check and make sure the players were okay. He took no action to see what happened, and he continued and joked and laughed with the players of this other team. This does not sit well with me. What is the point of a field supervisor when in a situation that someone is hurt, in this case 2 kids are hurt, and he looks the other way? He remained on the sideline and did nothing. With that, tonight I publicly file a complaint against the field supervisor, and I don't take that lightly. I take it serious, though, when player safety is in jeopardy. Our field supervisor is out there to collect a paycheck and socialize. He doesn't remain unbiased. His actions need to be addressed. He should have never been on either team's sideline during the game unless he's addressing a concern. The field supervisor should have been watching the game at either end and avoid distraction. His lack of action was disheartening this weekend. Over the last several weeks, I have witnessed refs that have been poorly trained and under-supported. We as coaches have been advised to give them grace and help. That works until players become at risk and they don't understand the rules or how to use the cards in their pocket. The refs this season have it rough. It's come to my attention that they've missed their training and they haven't been properly trained. Over the last several weeks at my games, these refs had said to me, "I don't know that rule very well, Coach. Sorry, I really should have called that kid more during the game. I'm unsure what to do with this call." Coach, is there any rules that you're big on? Because there are some rough teams out here and I want it to be a fair game. These young employees of the city are at the mercy of us coaches and they seem unsupported and unaware. This is their first job for many of them. And as Parks and Rec Department, they're being let down. What is more alarming is these refs know that they're rough and dirty teams out there, yet Parks and Rec is failing to address these coaches' actions. I truly think you need to come out and witness and see what is happening on these fields. 2 weeks ago, my husband, who is my assistant coach and was my assistant in the fall with no issue, was helping on the sideline with 3 other dads. The assistant field supervisor felt my husband was perceived as acting as a head coach and took it upon himself to yell and harass us from 10 yards, then 5 yards away. There was no issue at our game. We were losing with grace, trying to keep our kids' heads up. "Keith, you can't talk to the boys. Keith, step back behind the bench. Keith, you cannot coach." This all within an earshot of my players. And then they looked at me and said, "Coach, what are we doing wrong?" This was handled wrong in front of 5th and 6th graders. When I called the following morning, we were met with apologies and confirmation that my husband could be the assistant coach. However, that brings me to this question. Why can't my husband be a head coach? In every other league, he's the head coach of these boys. He's never been counseled on what he did wrong, given a verbal warning, or even given a chance to tell his story. He was met with a response that this is not a court of law, and his story didn't need to be heard from the heads of Parks and Rec. That sure seems sad that we're ostracizing a coach with a huge following. Give the man a chance. He's a dad, a mentor, and loved by 45 kids in this program. I invite you on Tuesdays and Fridays to come out to New Life Church. 45 kids, 10 parents out there loving our kids and this sport. It sure seems weird that year after year, though, we allow dads who are out there cussing and have to be broke up by cops.
I have to catch you up.
I appreciate your time and hope that we can do better for our kids.
Hi, my name is Ben Zwigo.
Ben, move the mic down.
Hi, my name is Ben Zwigo. I go to Trail Ridge Middle School. I'm student of the month. My dad has coached my brothers for years. He finally got the chance to coach my team in the winter, and now you guys are holding him back from coaching me and my team now. My friends and I begged him to coach. Let him coach us, please.
Hi, my name is Luke Vay. I am a second grader at Madison Elementary. I have played for Coach Keith and Miss Sabrina since kindergarten. We play all year long. Coach Keith is a great coach. He teaches us to play as a team and to play fair and be good sports. I was sad when he was told he could not be on the field coaching us outside. He does not when we play inside. I would like it if he could always be our coach.
Okay. Hi, my name is Carly Warren Vay. I live at 207 North Laurel Street here in Gardner. This is my son, Luke. He's a great kid. I'm going to keep this as short and sweet as I can because I know you guys have heard a lot about soccer today. It's been a topic that's been on all of our hearts for a while now, and it's been a very emotional roller coaster. Keith is the best coach I've ever seen. I have a daughter who is 17 years old. She's graduating from Gardner this year. She played sports until she hit middle school with Parks and Rec. I have never, ever, ever seen a coach as dedicated as him. And we've had a lot of coaches because he played a lot of sports. He is willing to give extra time. He's willing to do private lessons with my son if he wants to work on particular skills. Most of the time we have coaches who are just kind of there because we need a coach and we have to have somebody. And they don't really know the sport. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just kind of there. Keith knows what he's doing. Every kid we've played with has come back. If they took a break to play another sport, they came back. If they moved and they moved back, they came back. That is the kind of coach you guys are refusing right now. And that's pretty sad. As a manager at my job, if someone were to come to me and say, this person did this, and I say, what is your proof? Well, that's just my opinion, that's my feeling. I have to research. I don't just take one person's word and say, okay, we'll just go ahead and get rid of that person. I go talk to several people. I go check in other departments. I watch that person and see how they interact with other people. And if I don't see anything to back up that person's claim, that person's gonna get a coaching from me, not the person they're accusing, because that person is spreading gossip. And that is the kind of nepotism that you guys currently have in Parks and Rec. You've had people who say, I don't like that person, so I don't think they should be a coach. I don't like that person, so they shouldn't be allowed to be here or there. That's ridiculous. It's unprofessional, it's unfounded. And these people need to be coached on how to be professional, on how to actually research things, look at things, find out what's truly going on, before they just go out there and make statements like this and slander good people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have one last thing. We wouldn't want anyone else to be our son's head coach. His love and passion for the sport and teaching kids real principles, bar none. That's all.
Keith Chevitel, 635 Oakcrest Circle. They've been speaking on my behalf and everything else. I have reached out to all of you and everything else. And I was turned over to Jason Bruce, and Jason Bruce turned around and said, this is not a court of law. I believe what my employees say. You have no say in this. I asked each and every one of you, like they have requested, come out, see how I coach, see our teams, and know that my love is for these boys. My safety is for these boys. I request that you come out, and I ask that you overturn that and ask that I'm reinstated, that I can be the head coach for these boys as they've requested. We have 45 kids out there that want me. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes, I have an email from Dustin Duck Martin that he wanted me to read into record. So, good evening, council and city staff. I am sorry I can't be available tonight. I am at New Century Fieldhouse tonight having soccer practice with my older kids because this was the only available time this week for us to use their facilities. I didn't want to reschedule. We have to pay for the rental, and I don't want to lose the time slot. Like I said in my previous email, I have been part of Gardner Parks and Rec for over 10 plus years in some sort of capacity. I've coached, worked as an official of some kind, and even worked as a supervisor. I love this department, and when asked, where should I sign my kids up to play sports, I always tell them about GPR. Recently, for the past 10 seasons, I have coached soccer in Gardner, some seasons multiple teams. It's quite common when you find a coach that loves to do what we do, you find coaches who coach multiple teams in a season. We don't do it for attention or accommodations, but we do it for the joy it brings the kids and the love of the sport. Soccer in GPR, in my opinion, doesn't get the same advantages or fair treatment as other sports in the league. We don't get fancy jerseys like football. We don't get the best play facilities like baseball or softball do at Celebration Park ball diamonds. Soccer's grass is always too long, fields are never painted the best, and most of the time the lines are off. Our nets are falling apart, and most recently, we now don't get to practice fields. we don't get to the practice fields like other sports get. We, the soccer coaches, are being told that if we continue to use Celebration Park as a practice facility, that we will be punished by taking away our coaching credit. To some, it might not seem like a big deal, but to me and some other coaches, it's a slap in the face. We give up a lot of time and energy into this sport because we love it. We love our kids, and for me, I can honestly say I love the parents as well. I love it so much, I have sat on roundtables with Parks and Rec to find ways to grow our sport and make it better, and I love every minute of it. I get great joy and satisfaction in being able to give to a community that gave so much to me. You are basically telling us that Parks and Rec needs to keep the fields the best condition possible, so don't practice here. That isn't fair. I have already given examples why this isn't fair: grass, nets, etc. Baseball and softball use the respective fields. Basketball uses their respective gyms. Why is soccer different? Are credits being taken away from those coaches that coach those sports? Are they required to find green space? Is basketball asked to find a driveway? Do they go to Veterans Park and play there? Celebration Park is a public tax-paid park who many of these kids are playing on a busy, packed Saturday morning that parents pay for. There are coaches out there that respect the game and respect the facility and take care of Celebration. We pick up trash. Weather is bad, we don't practice, or we find an indoor facility and we pay out of our pocket. Mr. Shute, you can testify what I am saying is true. You have joined several of my practices and know that we pay for this out of our pockets. We make sure that when we practice, we do practice at Celebration Park, we treat it the utmost respect. We don't treat it like club teams that use it with no consequences, and we definitely treat it better than whoever decided to drive through the fields. But yes, please punish me by taking away my credit. Is it the money that we are worried about losing? Absolutely not. It's the principle of the thing. Can't kick me out because it's a public park, so let's take away my money. We volunteer so much to this sport, some more than others, but yes, please reward me by punishing me, please. I have the same right to have my kids play there as much as the high school kids that get their buddies together to play a pickup game, or the family gets together and plays football on the fields, or the club teams that use the facility and don't care if they mess it up or not. I get it. I completely understand what you were trying to do. I really do. Instead of taking away our credits, simple things like using the rain outline for bad weather and cancel all practices would help. Maybe in some of these green spaces that you speak of, set up actual soccer fields, much like you do basketball courts and baseball fields. City owns the land by New Life Church, and we have two extremely small goals and uneven ground, and the grass is too long. Clean it up, and that would be perfect to maintain and set up fields. Don't want to use Celebration? Find ways to give these athletes and kids some opportunities as you do other sports. The turnout and numbers are not there, we're told. I ask anyone on city council and city staff to give up a Saturday morning and come out to Celebration Park and tell me honestly that the demand and numbers are not there. Mr. Shute and Mr. Winters, if you are honest and you can back me up on this. The sports are not 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Don't treat it like they are. I appreciate Ms. Roberts for reading this out loud for me, and I appreciate everyone here tonight for taking their time to listen as well. Maybe what I say makes a difference, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't consider my credit a down payment for practice time. In the meantime, we have a league to practice for and a busy spring, summer full of tournaments. My invitation is always open. You can find Gardner Striker's schedule, grade school boys. We welcome in the sideline. Until then, thank you, Dustin Martin.
Thank you, Councilmember Roberts. And we also all received, just before the meeting, a letter from Ms. Allison Wilkinson. I won't read it. It essentially outlines some very similar points made by Dustin.
Forwarded that to the city clerk. Could it be put?
Yes, absolutely.
Who was it from?
Allison. being said, we'll move to consent. And I apologize. Typically, we'll address comments and matters towards the end of the meeting and council updates. So you're welcome to kind of hang around for a little bit longer after we have some discussion on that. So we'll move to consent agenda. There's an item on the consent agenda council would like to remove. Do I have a motion to approve the consent?
Motion. Sorry.
Second.
It was loud.
Motion, Robert, second, Deaton, we approve
Get
consent
in there.
agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Consent agenda passes. Nope. Yes,
Checking.
Steve was traveling. I mean, he was hoping to join by Zoom, and okay. No planning and zoning consent agenda. So moving to committee recommendations. Committee recommendation number 1. Consider adopting an ordinance approving a rezoning from R1 single family to RP2 two family and RP4 mixed density neighborhood for potential residential development at 183rd and Poplar.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Dave Knoppett, Community Development Director. I'm going to run you through a series of 4 slides very quickly as a summary to this item, and also just talk about your voting options tonight so that you have a good understanding of what's before you in regard to your considerations. So hopefully, with that said, there we go. This case involves a property located just to the south of Poplar and 183rd/Cherokee in this area. It is approximately 42 acres and it's currently zoned to R1 single family. The future land use map within the comprehensive plan, and actually the sub-area plan that supplements the comprehensive plan, identifies this parcel for medium density residential use in the future. And that is defined within the sub-area plan as a use that has 6 to 16 dwelling units per acre. So just wanted to make you aware of that. As you can see from the aerial above, I've got the 42 acres outlined that make up the parcel. The adjacent land uses to the west are the warehouse distribution centers. Those are actually in the city of Edgerton. Then to the north and to the east are residential land uses, and then to the south and the east are primarily agriculture or vacant land at this point in time. You can see the adjacent zoning is reflected there. R2 zoning to the north, agriculture and R1 zoning to the east, RP3 zoning to the south. That was associated with a previous development plan that was not developed, so I just want you to be aware of that. And then the LP zoning district for Edgerton, which has to do with the logistics park there in that city. From the standpoint of what's before you tonight for the rezoning and preliminary development plan, again, the full acreage is outlined in red, which is the 42-acre parcel itself. What is being considered tonight and what was considered before the Planning Commission is phase 1 of the development, and that is the area that's shaded in 2 different colors, and I'll explain the 2 colors in just a second. As part of that, there are 2 connections, road connections identified, one along Poplar, which would come to the south from where Poplar currently hits Cherokee, and would run through that first phase all the way down to the south. It basically follows the line where you see kind of the brown and yellow lines combined down the center of this narrow piece of the parcel. It has a total number of housing units of 121. Single family units out of that 121 are 27 units, and that's primarily the single family is in the kind of yellow area or the yellow lined area adjacent to the existing residential development that's in this area. That single family unit area is proposed to be RP2 zoning for approximately 8.2 acres of the site. And then the area that's adjacent to the warehousing, which is west of that and is kind of that brown color, is for multifamily units and townhomes in a townhome format. And there are approximately 94 of those units. And that proposed rezoning would be to RP4 for approximately 9.4 acres. Phase 2 that was discussed as part of the application is shown as the area that's blank just to the south of this, but within the red boundary. There's no specific development plan at this point in time that's associated with the preliminary development plan and the rezoning with you tonight. So this area would remain R1 zoning, and it encompasses approximately 24.4 acres. The staff recommendation, when I get to that, I just want to give you a little bit of a tidbit here, indicated that there's a condition that it could not be developed until additional road connections were made to the east to Gardner Road or to the south at 188th Street. So that area that is blank currently within that red area would remain that way until there were additional road connections into this parcel. The process that we've been through is the typical process with the Planning Commission. They conducted a public hearing and considered the item on March 27th of 2023. As part of that, there was significant public input and public comment that is reflected within your agenda packet. It was also placed on YouTube as a record of the meeting itself, so that is there. If you have questions regarding that, I can answer those questions or attempt to answer those questions as best as possible. As part of that, the staff made a recommendation of approval with 3 conditions. I've just laid those out. I'm not going to read those to you tonight. And then the Planning Commission recommended denial of this application for the rezoning and the preliminary plan. The suggested motion before you tonight that is in your packet is to approve the rezoning request and associated preliminary development plan with the conditions recommended by staff and adopt ordinance number 2764, an ordinance changing the zoning classification or districts of certain lands located in the city of Gardner, Kansas, under the authority granted by Title 17 of the Municipal Code of the city of Gardner, Kansas. Again, that is the area that is in the yellow and brown shaded area. That's the zoning request there, with RP2 being adjacent to the single family residential on the east side and RP4 to the west side of what would be Poplar against the warehouse industrial area. The reason this motion is suggested or is placed before you is because of drafting an ordinance and having that all prepared in case you choose to go this direction. What I want to indicate to you now, and I'm going to also have Ryan speak to this a little bit since we are absent one member, I want to make sure I get the voting correct, but in this case, this does require full governing body consideration, so the mayor is part of the voting group on this particular item. As we look at that under the circumstances of the governing body, it would take 4 votes from you to actually take action. So a 3-3 tie results in no action, but 4 votes is what would be considered an action. If you were to go with the suggested motion, you're essentially rejecting the Planning Commission's recommendation for denial and accepting the staff's recommendation of approval with the 3 conditions. So that's a little bit of a nuance to you. So if you need that explained later, just understand this motion is actually rejecting the Planning Commission's recommendation of denial of this request and then adopting it. If you voted this motion down, I believe you would be reaffirming the Planning Commission's recommendation, but you would still need 4 votes to do that. That's correct. I'm going to let Ryan kind of speak to this, especially since we have 1 member absent tonight.
So Steve's absence has kind of thrown a wrench into some of our voting calculations on this. So to approve the motion that you have in front of you, it would require 4 of the 5 of you up here to vote in favor of it. And the reason for that is that the statute says that to override the Planning Commission's recommendation, it requires a 2/3 vote of the membership of the governing body. So it's not simply a quorum in that within the meaning of the statute. It's actually of the members elect of the governing body. Because Steve's not here, you still have to count him to get to that. So that's 4 votes. Other action items that the statute contemplates is to accept the recommendation of the governing body. That does not have the same language in there, so 3 out of 5 votes on that would get us there on that. That would be to accept the recommendation of denial
From the Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the third option is that you can send it back with direction, send it back to the governing body or Planning Commission with instruction and direction, and that does not require a vote of the members elect, so a simple majority of the 5 of you, so that would take 3 out of 5 votes to send that back.
And
That's
we're,
sent back.
I was going to say, we're prepared to explain that again before you make your motion in that. So I would suggest at this point, we are available for questions. I know we do have the applicants' representatives here, and we also have some of the public here, but you do have a record of their comments as well in your packet, so.
And that, can I ask a quick question though? If it's sent back to planning commission with recommendations, is that the term? Instructions. If would it still come back to us again with that same majority needed, or?
No. So when you send it back, then they are required to take it up and consider it. If they simply fail to do that, it comes back to you, presumably with the same recommendation that they sent it back before. But under either circumstance, the supermajority no longer exists. You can pass it over with a simple majority. So you don't have to achieve the 2/3 vote. If you send it back, it comes back.
I'm prepared to answer
Sure,
questions or
so
wherever you want to proceed with this.
A couple things. It is our policy, if this has been brought through a public hearing, that we don't allow comment at this point, but I think I speak for the governing body that we are open to allowing public comment this evening. And I do have, two emails that I would like to read into the record. And one of them is fairly short, and one of them is fairly thorough. And so, after reading this, if you want to come up and you've got some unique points of view or some different things to think about, please do. Let's try not to restate the same thing over and over if we can. But let me read these first, and then we'll open it up to public comment. So the first one is from Carrie Roberts, 29700 West 184th Street. Good morning. I'm writing concerning the Pinnacle rezoning application. The Planning Commission voted for the people's concern over this matter, and I would hope that the City Council does the same. There is not the infrastructure to handle the potential amount of people that would be moving into the area. Single-family homes may be okay, but the massive traffic and children going to school would make this area even more dangerous than it already is. My son rides to Trail Ridge Middle School on a bus, which I had to pay for. Because of the lack of bus drivers, he rides with high school children. He has to go from our home to the high school before he's dropped off at his school, which is close to get free bus. The schools in this area are at capacity. Having kids needing to cross Gardner Road to get to school is a scary prospect. When walking with my children, I've almost had a car hit us crossing the light at a crosswalk. There are simply too many cars in this area to feel safe with our children doing this. Please consider the good of Gardner and the needs of the people that are here to be safe. And then the other one is from Amy Wilkins to City Council regarding rezoning Fairfield. Thank you for listening to our concerns. I want to speak on behalf of 124 of us living in Fairfield and Sherman Lake Estates. We have discussed our top concerns that were addressed in 2018, 2022, and continue today. These three concerns remain because they have not been addressed and are not resolved. We were surprised to see this go to City Council because in 2008, when the Planning Commission unanimously voted in our favor, agreeing on our concerns, this was dropped. Then last month, this was unanimously decided in our favor, 6-0, against this development again. These concerns remain and are very concerning to us. Number one, safety with traffic flow, especially to our children. There are many age groups on the streets all day long. You can go through our neighborhood, there are neighbors talking, kids riding bikes, playing football, basketball, etc. Many people out working in their yards, many walkers and runners too. Buses that frequently come through, including preschool and kindergarten buses. A new development this large typically has their own entrance, not going through an existing single-family neighborhood. Safety of these large construction crews going in and out of the neighborhood. Concern number two, schools. Many parents live in this neighborhood for the specific schools. With this amount of development, this could make current students have to go to a different school. Families live here for the schools and for siblings and others to stay in the familiar schools. The quality of education with the overflow of students is being already almost at max capacity. Concern number three, traffic flow. We went from 80 homes to 314. This is a 393% increase. 390% increase in traffic flow. At one point, the traffic study showed it not being possible for this development. Now, putting in our one street, it meets the standard. We know that when it comes down to people, it won't go over to Poplar Street. They will go the shortest route, which is through 184th Street, Sherman Lake, and down Butternut Street, Fairfield. The MapQuest will automatically take you through this way. So although it looks like people will go to Poplar, we know it will not happen. This is the reality. Once it is built, this traffic flow will go through a single-family subdivision, just like the semi-trucks that get turned around in our neighborhood because their MapQuest and Garmin's take them through our neighborhood to get on the highway. Zoning from low density to high density is a drastic increase. We have many other concerns, but these are our top main concerns. We're thankful that Planning Commission agreed that this is just too much. To go from a single family of low density to high density is an extreme amount, and once it is rezoned in the lump, it allows for who knows what will be built. The original plan was many apartments. Will this truly be monitored? Once it is sold, the builder has no idea how the upkeep will be. It won't be their concern anymore. It could be sold to many different property owners, and ideally this plan may look okay to them. The goal is for them to build, sell, and retire, which is what they have told us. Which is great for them to retire, but it does not represent that they will be managing and overseeing it. It is hard to hear them say how wonderful the property will be kept up and maintained, but yet they can't say that because it will be sold and not monitored by them. With then renting, will this be government subsidized? I was told by City Council that if we ask, we are allowed to have our questions answered. They don't have to tell us with plan proposal, but if we ask, we are entitled to response. Can you please answer this too? These are our forever homes. We value our homes, neighborhood, and community. We are vested in our homes and our city. We have a 30-plus year commitment and continue to keep our neighborhoods nice. Many of us bought these homes to retire in and live in forever. With renting coming and going, this changes our neighborhood. Please don't allow the significant change to our neighborhood and change our well-established neighborhood. We are more than a neighborhood. We are friends and family in our forever homes. Thank you for listening to us. Shane and Amy Wilkins. Okay. So, that being said, I'd come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Curtis Holland. I am legal counsel to the developer of the proposed project, Pinnacle Construction. Would like to introduce some members of our team. First, with Pinnacle Construction, Doug Bohai, our civil engineer who prepared the plans and did the drainage work and all the other engineering work for the project, Greg Watson of McClure Engineering. And then finally, we have a traffic engineer, Janelle Clayton with Merge Midwest Engineering, and she's here to answer any questions you might have about traffic. I know traffic is probably the single biggest issue on this project. Just to give you just a little bit of a background, and would you mind, Dave, if you could go to the, is this turn or move the?
Sharon, do you want to move it?
What am I doing?
I'd like to go to the slide that showed the intermodal facility to the west. There you go. Obviously, you're familiar with the property. Staff did a good job laying out where it is. It's a 42-acre tract. The proposal tonight is to basically develop the northern portion of the property, the narrower area of the property shown in red. You can see to the west the white rooftops of the warehouse buildings that are part of the intermodal project, and Edgerton at one time was in Gardner. But it's those two big warehouse properties, and then of course the rest of the intermodal. So familiar with that. My client acquired the outline in red in approximately 2008, just so you know, and actually built some of the homes. They acquired several of the lots that were left over in Fairfield that had been undeveloped, so they built and developed some of those homes and sold them back in that same time period. Little bit of history. Yes, this project was heard by the city. I don't know if the council, we ever got to you all back in that day. And I know some of you may not have been here in 2018. Some of you were.
I was on the planning commission.
Yeah, so you may remember me. We went to the planning commission and just, yeah, there was a lot of folks. The room was full. There's probably twice as many than there are here tonight. And partly that was because the request at that time was to zone the entire property R4. Not RP4 or RP2, but R4. And we didn't have a plan. We didn't show a map. We didn't have lots. Probably weren't smart about it. And it generated a lot of interest from the residents, and some of whom are here and probably were back here in 2018, no doubt. I was here at the meeting, and there's a slight little error in the staff report. It says that the application was denied. It wasn't denied. We withdrew it before it got to y'all, so that we could go back, sharpen our pencils, and rethink what we were doing, and maybe come back. And then, of course, what happened? 2019 COVID, 2020 COVID. More recently, we've had lots of difference or change, if you will, in the marketplace in terms of interest rates, construction costs, labor shortages, and so on and so forth. A lot of changes have occurred over the past couple of years. We're just now bringing this back to you for you to consider it and to look at the changes. So when we first met with staff, and in fact, we had, I wasn't there, but we had a neighborhood meeting. There were concerns raised about, at that point in time, all of this was shown to be RP4 type housing. And if you could go back to the slide that shows the, our plan, there you go, thank you. All of it was shown to be RP4, and there was concern raised again about that. And so after reconsideration and talking with staff did a pretty good job of trying to guide us to an appropriate use here on the site. And we ended up deciding to build in a buffer, if you will, to the existing homes to our east. So we, as you can see here in the yellow shaded area, we decided to put in single-family homes to act as that buffer. I will say to you that the Poplar Street, which splits the area, if you will, separates it on the from west to east. The west side of this piece of property, the narrow strip on the screen on the west side, left side of the page, butts up right against those warehouses, butts right up against the intermodal. It makes it extremely difficult to put single-family housing in there. It's the activity over at the intermodal and the warehouses is noise, it's trucks, it's lights, it's 24/7 activity over there. And so you can imagine single-family homes, that's not exciting. And we could, put single-family lot lines on that property. They'll never sell. Or if they do, there will be no way to make that economically work. It just isn't going to happen. When you look at the comprehensive plan designation, staff pointed it out to you. It's shown on the comprehensive plan for medium density residential, which allows for densities of between 6 and 16 units per acre. That comp plan change was made in 2016. So whether everybody knew it or not, and there was significant public input into that plan when it was approved in 2016. It was changed to medium density residential, no doubt in part because of the developments on the west side of us, the intermodal. So everybody who doesn't think that this was, or that this was always going to be developed for single-family housing, I guess I respectfully disagree. The comp plan was specifically changed to allow medium density residential on this ground. The density that we're proposing is just a little over 5 units per acre on the development part that we're showing to you tonight, the phase 1, if you will. We're not talking about phase 2. We're not rezoning phase 2. We don't have a plan on phase 2 yet, the bigger chunk to the south. But on the portion that we are proposing for development, it meets, in fact, it's less than what the suggested density is under the comp plan, which is, again, between 6 and 16 units per acre. We're at just a little over 5. So, this isn't really a land use issue, in our opinion. I don't think it's a land use issue in staff's opinion, and shouldn't be for the city, because you already made the decision when you change the comp plan to allow for medium density residential on this property. And that's what we're doing here. The plan's been reviewed by the city staff. We had our, in terms of the traffic, drainage, and so forth. All of it's been reviewed and determined by the city to comply with your rules and regulations. Your traffic engineer, your third-party traffic consultant, HDR, looked at the traffic report and said it's okay. Now, there was concern raised by staff about the amount of traffic that we're hearing from the folks tonight too. But really what it comes down to is, I understand, and I'm not a traffic engineer, is that the 184th Street Road, which is the road that gets you out to Gardner Road, is a local type road. And I guess the standard in the city is that the capacity for a local road like that is 1,500 trips, average daily trips. 1,500. Our trip generation, when added to the existing trips that are already out there, there's 1,070 trips already out there apparently from that existing neighborhood. When we add our units, these same units that you're looking at tonight, we're talking about adding an additional 342 trips to that road network. And it becomes, it results in a average daily trip amount of 1,412 trips. Okay, so we're less than the 1,500. We're at 1,412. Our part of it is adding 342 trips compared to the over 1,000 that's already out there. So while I understand and hear concern about traffic or the capacity of the road network, it's been deemed to fall under the city's rules for capacity of the average daily trips that could be put on the road. Not all these trips are going to end up going down 184th Street, and we have 183rd Street. We do have a separate new entrance we're going to put in off of 183rd Street, Poplar Street, for egress and ingress to this project. So while we do hear the concern, we do meet the rules of the city, and you know, I understand the Planning Commission struggling with the vote. I mean, there was a lot of people here that night, and it's tough, and it's not easy for you to sit in your seats either and look them in the eye and say, hey, I'm sorry, but these are the rules, and the project complies with our codes and with our guidelines, and it does. And so while I understand it's difficult, we're asking you to approve the plan before you tonight. We, again, meet all of the rules of the city, the planning guidelines, the planning regulations, even with respect to traffic. And there was some concern about school capacity. I don't think that there's any evidence to suggest that the schools can't handle any of the children that come from these developments or this subdivision. It's not, by the way, to answer the question, there's no government funding of this project at all. These are market rate housing that's going to be provided to the city. The townhome units themselves are in the range of $250,000 per unit. The rent rates in those units are going to be $1,750 plus and up to the $2,500 range. So the people that are going to move into these units are people that are from the community, and people, we're talking school teachers, fire personnel, police, regular folks who live in the community already that can't necessarily afford a place and can hopefully move into these types of communities. We need more of these kind of communities in the city of Gardner. We've heard a lot of complaint about a lot of multifamily, in particular, the number of apartments that have been approved in the city of Gardner. This isn't an apartment project, it's a townhome project, it's a difference. So, you know, just in closing, we meet the guidelines, we meet the comp plan designation for the property, and so we'd ask for your approval. We're all here to answer any questions if you have any. We're also not opposed. I understand that one of the council members isn't here to vote tonight. If it's your prerogative to send us back and have more conversations with the planning commissions and try to address some of these issues, we're not opposed to that either. But with that said, I would close and take any questions you have now. I would also ask if you would give me the leeway to at least come back up and address any issues or questions that are raised by others.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we step aside? Why don't we have
Sure.
public? Public comment. Please state your name and address, and we do limit the public comment to 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Ann Fisher. I live at 18372 Butternut. Could I ask that you guys speak into your microphones? We can't hear you back there. It's very quiet. Despite you already hearing the concerns that have already been brought forward, I'd like to have my word on record. I only held back during public comments because you guys asked that. So you're going to hear some of the same things that have already been said in your emails. I've lived in my residence since 2005, probably the 6th residence to be in Fairfield subdivision. During this time, I started a family, and I've seen so much change come to Gardner. First being Gardner's failure not annexing the intermodal facility, hence losing all control for development. Now I look out my back deck and I see lovely warehouses. Since that time, Fairfield residents have had to contend with semi-truck traffic, the racetrack that has become 183rd, and I mean a racetrack. I mean, I've seen cars almost hit head-on multiple times. Kids almost get hit just trying to walk across the street. Random strangers walking up and down the streets on 183rd, and I've even come in contact with subjects who have been riding the train and jumped off at Intermodal. I have children. My son plays out in front of our house almost daily. Butternut is busy enough with the occasional semi, lost intermodal workers, and the residents who live within the subdivision. This plan set forth is an utter failure. There's no plan to alleviate and address the traffic issues we already have. I mean, he said we're barely under 1,500. Okay, so we're just going to go barely under? That's really concern for our kids that are out there playing. I have little to no confidence in a traffic study done by an entity who is hired by the developer. When we bought our home, we bought it due to the location, i.e. no multi-dwelling housings at the time in the city, but still slightly outside the city. Don't get me wrong, I love this side of town. It's finally bringing some business to it. It is starting to grow on that side of town. This plan is bringing the multi-density apartments / multiplexes that our family never wanted nor had ever been planned for. The original plan behind Fairfield was to have single-family residents. In fact, directly behind my address was supposed to be a cul-de-sac with single-family homes. To me, this is a developer's way for a quick money grab. This is a multi-housing development, will drown our already crowded schools. I have reached out to the district and am aware of the current numbers for each of our schools that these kids could possibly feed into. Gardner needs more homes as opposed to the duplexes and apartments. In my opinion, Gardner is turning into nothing but a multifamily / apartment destination. Doesn't the city want to build roots? People that are going to grow up in our community and live here for their whole life, kids starting in elementary school, graduating from Gardner Edgerton High School. You will not establish this. Instead, Gardner will become a transient community, folks coming and going to further jobs at Edgerton's intermodal facility. Let Edgerton develop all their free space for multiplexes. There are not enough single-family dwellings available for future citizens to buy. Ask any realtor in town. You can't find a house on the market. Multifamily dwellings bring higher crime rates. Look at the other multifamily housing units within the city. You will see a higher crime rate guaranteed. The one exception is probably the duplexes across the north side of 183rd. They, however, have a high HOA, and I'm pretty sure that most of those people own their houses over there. We have a planning commission for a reason. If you don't follow their recommendations, what's the point? I ask that you don't approve this plan for the safety of our children, traffic concerns, our schools being overwhelmed already, and the safety of our current residents. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Virginia Jordan. My address is 18390 Mimosa Court. And one of my concerns is that the multifamily housing apparently will be rentals. And as most of you probably realize, people who rent don't always take care of their property the way that people that own their property do. So that is definitely a concern for me. Another point that I want to bring up that really was concerning to me is when the gentleman that was with the legal representation had mentioned that if it was single-family homes, they wouldn't be able to sell them because they were so close to the warehouses. I don't feel like the people who currently have already bought their homes with the initial idea that that was going to be single family homes prior to the intermodal and the warehouses coming in should be penalized just because they don't think they can sell a single family home back there now after this has occurred. Thank you for your consideration to deny this motion.
No further comment, so we'll move to council. Question.
The traffic study that was done, you're talking about 184th Street. When I look at the plat,
Mark, can you speak into the mic?
sorry. When the traffic study was done and for 184th Street, and we talk about 1,412 trips, is that mostly due to just the single-family homes that you're talking about adding anyway?
Can I interject? Can we get the picture up there of the actual plat that shows everything? The final that shows the apartments as well as the town? We haven't seen that yet. And when we're talking, it'd be nice to have all. It's in the planning commission.
Yeah, I think it's the same as the, let me make sure. Which page was it in your agenda, just do you remember? Just to make sure.
Page 80 or 81.
Yeah, so it's, okay. We just need to go back to my second slide. Actually, we can go to my fourth one, it'd be fine. Okay. Yeah, so essentially, if my picture wasn't in that corner, you would have the full area there. What's shown in your packet does not have the breakout between the single family and the proposed townhomes in the same color. So what you have in your packet though shows the single family in a green cross-hatched area. Is that what you're talking about, Councilman Baldwin?
Yes, but yeah, that page shows what you're talking about.
Right.
I want to see, I'd like to see up here the next page down where you've got the green cross of the single family, and then you show the townhomes as well so that we can see what it's really going to look like.
I don't think I have that even on the hidden slides, do I?
Yeah, it's the next page down.
Yeah, it's not on the slide presentation. That one didn't make it into the slide presentation. Essentially what you're talking about, because I'm looking at the page now, if people that have the packets before you, hopefully it's the same pages. Does it say the page number like 82, 81? Yeah, so it's 82, I believe, is what Councilman Baldwin's referring to.
Can we pull that up?
No,
You can't go to the internet, pull that up like we are.
unless Corey might find, or Jesse, are you looking for it on the Y drive? We might be able to get it off the Y drive.
I can forward it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So what I'll try to do, I'll try to describe it while they're looking for it on the Y drive, but it's page 82 in your packet, and essentially it's a replica of what's on page 81 or what's before you, except just to the south where you see Poplar coming out on the slide here, and you see kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single-family homes. In those 2 blank areas down to the south, it shows the format for the townhomes as a footprint there. So what you're seeing is a number of those building footprints, if you will. It's proposed that this would be done kind of as a 3-lot development, having multiple buildings on each of those lots. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, this will help.
There
we
you go. Thank you.
All
very
right.
much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that's the exhibit you're referring to. I'm gonna try to, because there has been different numbers thrown out on traffic study, and the Public Works Director may help me, but I just wanna make sure we've got it. Originally, when this proposal came to us, there were a few more single-family homes as part of this. So the original traffic study had shown average daily trips generated, and this included the existing residential that's already there, was at 1,463 average daily trips. That's what was proposed. It had 39 single-family units. We dropped that back to 27, And that's where the 1412 number that was cited by the legal representation comes from. So when they were talking about the 1412, that's because we have 27 single-family houses versus 39 that came into us with the original plan. So the change, there was no change in the multifamily numbers. Those stayed at 94. I'm going to cite this because they're fairly accurate. I was checking with Kellen as some of the math was being done or was being talked about here. So without this development right now, the average daily traffic count is 1,070 trips daily, average daily number. This development, as shown, the multifamily plus the single family here, the total 121 units, would add 342 average daily trips to the network at that point in time, and that's where the 1,412 trips come from. Does that help?
So it's to the network and not just necessarily like, I think you said 184th Street. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's 100.
So is it specifically to 184th Street, or is it to the network? Is it to 183rd Street?
Yeah, that is to 184th Street, which is the one we were primarily concerned with because it was approaching that maximum allowable traffic that's available.
But 184th Street is a cul-de-sac off.
184th Street is a cul-de-sac off here, but 184th Terrace is connected to this. So the modeling, the traffic modeling, and again, I'm going to rely on Public Works and also their traffic engineer. The way the traffic modeling is, there's certain assumptions made about how these trips come out when they're generated, right? So there's a percentage of the trips out of this development that would go on Poplar, go up to 184th Terrace to Butternut, and then take 184th Street. If you think about the morning commute, they're going to leave and maybe go to the interchange at Gardner and I-35. That cut through on 184th Street, the Gardner Road, may be perceived or may actually be a shorter way to get there than to go all the way up to 183rd Street and go to the light and get in the traffic there at the light and go down Gardner Road. So that's where the modeling tries to at least project or portray a percentage of traffic that may make those decisions. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
So that's how that number is projected.
And is it fair to say that the townhome section of this would come back through planning and or through the city council? Is it as it's depicted here? I mean, the green single family homes seem to indicate that platting is identified and ready to go into whatever home construction you're going to do. Is the townhome, how would that work?
So both of these items are considered planned districts, okay? And we've had this discussion. Councilman Baldwin's already shaking his head. He's heard this before. But with these types of planned districts, the preliminary plan that's shown is what they get locked into for basic platting and basic building formats and what the zoning allows, okay? It would, if approved, come back to the Planning Commission. Final plans, final development plans would throw on architectural details and other things like that, go to the Planning Commission, but do not come back to the governing body typically, okay? We have had instances where we've had a condition added to have it come back to the governing body, and that's certainly within your purview. If you choose to have that condition, we could add that to your motion. So, but as far as the preliminary plan, this would be basically the details that you see. It's intended to figure out those technical details to see if this is a feasible development, but it also locks them into an RP plan district. And what you're seeing here is they'd be locked into this many housing units, they'd be locked into the basic frameworks, and then the details of landscaping, architecture, those kinds of things are all dealt with at the final plan stage.
One last one.
And I do one more thing, just so you know. With the single family side of this, even though it's a planned district, that final plan is typically the plot plans that are submitted with the building construction. So it's handled a little differently for single family versus the multifamily.
The road at the bottom, 185th Court, that's going to end in a cul-de-sac. Is that the way to look at that?
At this point in time, yes, and that's a fire district requirement so that there's turnaround space for their trucks and maneuvering at that. That's also the reason for the one connection. Back in previous iterations of this, the cul-de-sacs that you saw from 184th Street and 185th Street were also attached to Poplar as part of what was alluded to in the discussions with staff. It was felt to minimize the connections into the residential area, but the fire district required a second entry, and that's why 184th Terrace is shown as a connection to Poplar.
And would Poplar be on the city or on the developer?
It'd be a public roadway, so that would be right of way that's dedicated to the city. All the roads in this particular proposal would be public roadways.
Do you have any more questions, Mark?
I reserve my right in a minute. We'll see.
I have a question about the school district. I think I read in the staff report from Planning Commission notes that somebody asked if there was any communication from the school district, and I don't remember if I saw an answer.
There has not been any communication from the school district.
Did we
on
get
this.
any since the Planning Commission meeting?
No, we
or-
have not received any from the Planning Commission. No official communication from the school district that I'm aware of. I've not seen anything.
No, but we have had some interaction
Yes.
before at times from the school district. So I didn't know if, since it was brought up at the Planning Commission, if we then investigated it further. That was my main question right now.
Okay.
Council President, anything?
Sure, I got a bunch of stuff. So, Dave,
Can't hear you.
quickly summarize, Dave, the reasons that Planning Commission denied this. What criteria failed?
I think now, understand, just like you, they have the advantage of having a public hearing. So when staff in their role, we're usually assessing towards things like the comprehensive plan. We're assessing towards the policies and the ordinances that are adopted by the city. So that's where our recommendation is primarily based. With the public hearing, I believe that the primary element of this was the traffic element. I think Commissioner Ham was the one that had probably the strongest statements on that in the public record regarding the traffic concerns that they had primarily along 184th Street based on what they were hearing from the public at that point. I would say there may have been discussions like what came up with the school, but it didn't raise to that same level of concern in their discussions.
I appreciate that because not everybody had time to watch the video or read all of the stuff in our packet. So synopsis right here. Okay. So let me address some of the comments from the public real quick, then I'll come back to you, Dave.
Okay.
Number one, I understand the concerns about the school, but we have no purview there, no jurisdiction. So basically everything with the school, other than us allowing more people in our town, that's all we can really control there. As far as there were some comments about, this was our original plan or the original developer told us X. Yes, this particular location is interesting because there was never a plan for a bunch of warehouses west of it. And then warehouses were coming and they were going to be ours, and then they're not. So again, more problems. Looking at this, I do applaud the developer in, having a separation there. I know that there's been previous plans with this area, and getting anybody to put single family on that west side will be tough. I agreed with that statement. What I am curious about is where 185th Court will cul-de-sac. Was any investigation done as to having it connect all the way to Butternut?
Yeah. So initially, when this came in, there was a look at that, and that's where the 39 single-family units came from. There were 12 additional units kind of heading to the east there, and it would connect up with Butternut. there were some concerns raised that as part of that evaluation that had to do with streamway setbacks, some of the drainage issues in this area and that's part of the reason that came into the discussion between technical staff, the engineers, with the development team kind of late in the process. But because of that element, that's where we dropped back from making that connection, because depending on how that streamway setback is determined coming up from what would be your right in that corner, if you follow some of the topography, you can kind of see the tighter lines coming up in there. Depending on how that is calculated and where it's located could influence how that road may be able to go through or connect into it at a future date. So they were not prepared, and staff was not prepared to go to that level of technical detail at the time before, in order to get it into the Planning Commission agenda.
Okay, I'd be really curious to see that looked at, because I understand the concern with having two entrances, but to essentially address all of these people's concerns, if everybody in this new development stays on Poplar, other than the fact that they now are looking at something other than the back of a warehouse, the traffic issue is somewhat alleviated. So I would be super curious to see if 184th Terrace was a cul-de-sac as well, and then Butternut was connected. And obviously you keep the condition that phase 2 would require Poplar to go on down, or you connect out to Gardner Road. Because at least then, somebody on the south side of this in one of the townhomes, now they've got to go south to go back north. So there's less incentive now to go down and around, to come all the way back up to 184th versus just going down Poplar to 183rd. And then that would keep these new traffic counts, which I understand are under the limit, out of going through the current dead-end streets and cul-de-sacs that these people are used to, and still satisfy everything, I believe. Can we look at that?
So it is something that could be looked at further, absolutely. I'm going to speculate a little bit here, but I'm going to turn to the Public Works Director in a second here. I think one of the items with this would be how the model would project that southern piece and the traffic that would still come up Butternut and go across on 184th Street. So without doing that modeling, it's hard for us to tell you what percentage would actually happen.
I understand, but
we also just need to make sure that Fire District would be on board with that shift, because there are some limits that they have regarding how things can be reached and things like that. But that would be a perfunctory thing that we could check on too.
Okay.
Public Works Director's nodding off at the side, so not nodding off. He's nodding.
Wake up! Wake up!
He's nodding that he's in agreement, so I'm in safe territory still.
Yeah, we'd have to see a pretty much full revised study on that to see what parts of the traffic would still end up on Butternut and still end up on 184.
Okay, and that's 100% what I expected you to say, and I appreciate that. Already got a traffic issue. Yeah. So I actually like this development. I like the single family homes on the east side. I like that we're actually filling in the west side. I agree you're not going to have single family over there. But to address these people's concerns with the traffic, I would like to see this sent back to planning with the direction to look at an alternative of 185th Court going to Butternut, which obviously I assume this developer will eventually be looking at for continuing out to east, or maybe change what they want to do with Poplar long term. But that's kind of where I'm sitting, is it goes back to planning to basically look at this again in a way to help alleviate some of those concerns, but still get this development in, because I see the value in it, and we're not going to get anything else in that location. It's going to be hard. So that's my thoughts.
Well, I obviously disagree. I wouldn't want to send it back to the Planning Commission. I think part of the process is we get public feedback. If I don't have any public feedback, then I try to make the best decision I can. However, I've got public feedback that we should deny this. I denied it back in 2018 when I was on the Planning Commission. Now I know that the plans have changed, but it's the same feedback that I value, and it's part of the process. So I wouldn't send it back. I would deny it.
The one comment I'll say to that is, I understand what you're saying, and I empathize. The kicker there is, I haven't heard anything that says why I should deny this. I understand people don't like it, but it meets all of our land development codes. Staff has reviewed it. Traffic has been signed off. Yes, it brings it up, and it's still under the cap. But so far, this plan meets all our criteria.
No.
Sir, I'm sorry. I may have some insight that might help you guys out with this. If I could talk for a minute. I'm sorry I missed it earlier. I was dealing with some stuff.
At this point, we kind of need just to be council discussing this.
Just let him talk. I just want to know what happened to the planning commission recommendation.
I guess I would echo Mark's comments in the sense that, in the development that I live in, there are multifamily homes as well. I can't say that anything else that has been raised as a concern. I completely understand the traffic concern, and I think that looking at different ways in which to address that concern would also address the concerns of the Planning Commission as they brought it up. I think that the compromise that the developer put in to finish out to add that buffer zone of additional single-family homes along the edge, and then also add a street and add another buffer between the Edgerton development and the rest of Gardner with the townhomes is a good compromise that is consistent with the rest of Gardner and other developments that we have within the city. I don't think that anybody else that's going to move into the green hatched area in here is going to be surprised with the fact that there are multifamily homes or townhomes to the west of their homes. And I think that trying to get a better idea of the butternut to that portion of it would be interesting, and also to cut off 184th Street. We could also look at I would argue that for the concerns on 183rd Street, we've done some things in the city. I would say the crosswalk that we did at Madison, where the Greenway crosses Madison, that has done wonders to slow down traffic in that area.
Oh my God.
So I'm not anti-multifamily, I think we need all sorts of housing. I'm concerned about the traffic, and I'm trying to listen to the residents' concerns.
It sounds like the main concern is traffic, and so if we bring it back to look at some alternative traffic routes to address the concerns of both the Planning Commission and the public, that can give us more ideas. It's not approving it as it is with the traffic concerns that we have, but it's looking at alternative ideas to get a development in this track, but also address concerns of the public and the Planning Commission to look at alternative routes.
So there sounds like there's kind of an agreement to send it back with.
That would be my recommendation, is we send it back to planning to look at the alternative routing and see what that does. Developer, what their thoughts are, before it gets back to
So
planning.
we need to find out now, how many
Do we-
votes do you need for this?
Do we motion that?
So was there,
And
would there be a motion then?
And I'm going to ask for clarification because I want to make sure from the standpoint of when this goes back, because the statutes do require us to receive adequate instruction about what the Planning Commission is to look into. It doesn't just open up everything at that point in time. So I want to make sure from a legal standpoint, is the city attorney satisfied with?
Right. I'll go ahead and read the language of the statute. It's if you were to vote to return it. If you were to vote to return it, it would be to return the recommendation to the Planning Commission with a statement specifying the basis for. for the governing body's failure to approve or disapprove.
Okay.
So, to return it, it would be to return the recommendation to the Planning Commission with a statement specifying the basis for the governing body's failure to approve or disapprove.
So,
our recommendation is we can't approve or disapprove because we're not quite sure what the traffic situation would be if an alternative route was generated.
Turning comfortable with that?
Is that good?
Yeah.
Or could we just more generally, to alleviate traffic concerns on 184th
With alternative routes.
with alternative routes, or
Is that too generic? Or is
Well,
that
I think that there may be solutions. I mean, traffic engineers, there are a lot of different things that they can do to calm traffic in addition to routing. So I would think you would want to leave your traffic options as open as you could to try to come to a solution.
yes. Okay, so that would be we need as a motion.
Correct.
Okay.
What is the motion?
Motion to return it to the planning commission on the basis that the planning commission investigate alternate, or basically stating that you didn't approve it because of concerns about traffic, with direction that they investigate traffic alternatives.
Only traffic?
Only traffic.
Only traffic? Only traffic?
It's up to you all. I mean, I'm hearing
I think
traffic.
that's the main concern. Yeah.
I disagree. We have many concerns. Planning commission said no.
So is there a motion?
I move to send this back to Planning Commission since we could not approve or disapprove pending further investigation of traffic alternatives. Anything else there? Okay, as that.
And what?
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Ween, that we approve the motion. All, do you want to do?
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Ween?
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
No.
Mayor Winters?
Yes. So the motion passes.
Okay, and before I leave the podium, I'll, just so people know that are in the audience and everything like that, the way the statute reads is it goes back to the next available planning commission meeting. Our next planning commission meeting is next Monday, the 24th of April. It may not be feasible to get those kinds of modeling done. I'll have to talk to the applicant, things like that, to see if we can get things into the packet, because the packets go out on Wednesday of this week. So it's one of those things that I don't know that we've got enough turnaround time to get adequate information put together. So if that's not the case, it would go to the May Planning Commission meeting. I just want to make sure people understand that. I think that's, you're looking beyond me, so I can't see behind me.
You're correct. The language of the statute says it goes before the planning commission at the next meeting, and they can take appropriate action,
Okay.
which could be to hear it, continue it further to get.
Okay, so they
further
could
study.
continue it further. We just need to put it on the agenda. Okay, so we'll put it on the Monday agenda for the 24th. That's coming back to them. We'll explain those reasons, and they could recommend to continue it into their May meeting to have further discussion to allow time for those numbers or those concerns to be modeled out. So just so
I
we're
would like
aware
a
of that.
good evaluation. So,
Yeah. So just so you're aware, it's just the statutory. I wanted to make sure we were still going to be okay with the statutory requirements on that.
All right, thank
Okay.
you. Dave, you're still up there.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
And
Any
the
recommendation?
Public Works Director's still not nodding off, so we're okay.
That's good, that's good. Consider approving a conditional use permit for Moose's Barbecue at 213 East Main Street.
I would say good evening again, so I will. Dave Noppick, Community Development Director, as mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for Moose's Barbecue at 213 East Main Street. This is the result of the ordinance changes. Do you want me to wait until?
You could pause.
Okay. Wait for a second for. good? Okay. Okay, once again, this is for Moose's Barbecue at 213 East Main Street, as mentioned, conditional use permit. This item is before you as a result of the ordinance changes we made for mobile food and beverage establishments, and it requires a conditional use permit because Moose's basically has its trailer there 24/7 on that location. They've been in operation there for several years. They came in to make their conditional use application. This item was heard by the Planning Commission at its March 27th meeting. We had a public hearing on that meeting. Basically, for this item, it is surrounded by commercial development in that area. And so staff, working with the Planning Commission, recommended approval and came up with 11 conditions of that approval. They're listed in your packet there. Most of these things have to do with some of the physical nature of what's going on there. Some of them have to do with ensuring that they meet certain policies and requirements for permitting, because there will still need to be a temporary use permit issued to this establishment to prove that they meet the health requirements and they meet the fire requirements and things like that. The interesting part of this is that the conditional use permit condition indicates that this would expire, the conditional use would expire on December 31st of 2027. So the idea is here that they do not have to keep coming back every year for this conditional use permit, but they will have to get their annual temporary use permit to make sure they stay up with the regulations there. As part of that administrative review for the temporary use permit, we will also do kind of an administrative background check to make sure that there aren't any complaints that have been filed by neighbors and residents. If we hear of those or we are aware of those, there's a possibility that we may have them come back to the Planning Commission and reconsider the conditional use permit at that point in time. If that happens, it would come back to you all ultimately for consideration there. So with that, I'm going to cut my presentation short and see if there's any questions that you have on the recommendation or the conditions.
We can open this up to public comment. Seeing none. Council, do you have any questions, comments, concerns? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Roberts. That we adopt ordinance number 2765, an ordinance approving a conditional use permit on certain lands located in the city of Gardner, Kansas, under the authority granted by Title 17 of the Municipal Code of the city of Gardner, Kansas.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ween,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2765 passes. Dave?
I think you're done with me tonight.
All right.
So you.
All right. Moving on. New business. New business item. Now we get to have Matt up here for a while. New business item number 1. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the city to issue industrial revenue bonds, Series 2023, Main Street Marketplace, in the principal amount of not to exceed $4 million for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping a commercial facility, and authorizing the execution of certain documents in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
At the October 17th, 2022 meeting, Council adopted resolution number 2114, stating the city's intent to issue future IRBs for redevelopment of the old Price Chopper store. Council's act of passing this ordinance tonight authorizes both the issuance of IRBs and the execution of associated documents necessary to complete the issuance of the IRBs. The city's bond counsel, Tyler Ellsworth, is here tonight and can help answer any questions you have. These bonds will not be a general obligation to the city. It is staff's recommendation that you adopt the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Matt. Is there any public comment for new business item number 1? Tyler, welcome. Any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton. We adopt ordinance number 2766, an ordinance authorizing the city of Gardner, Kansas to issue its industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law, Series 2023, Main Street Marketplace, in the principal amount not to exceed $4 million for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping a commercial facility, and authorizing the execution of certain documents in connection with the issuance of bonds.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ween,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2766 passes. The next three, correct?
Correct.
We'll probably combine into one presentation. They're all similar in nature, and then we can handle them individually.
As the mayor mentioned, the next three items on the agenda tonight are related to the Hilltop Ridge Special Benefit Districts. The first one, ordinance number 2767, pertains to the Hilltop Ridge Offsite Sewer and 167th Street Improvements District. Basically, the proposed ordinance, it amends the existing ordinance guiding that special benefit district to modify it, the method of assessment from a square foot basis to a per lot basis. The second item, ordinance number 2768, pertains to the Hilltop Ridge Phase 1 First Plat Internal Improvement Special Benefit District. It amends an existing ordinance in order to modify the description to include additional grading and storm drainage improvements, increase the maximum cost of from $500,000 to $582,000, and change the method of assessment from a square foot basis to a per lot basis. Then the final item is a resolution number 2121. It authorizes the execution of an agreement between the city and M&P Real Estate Investments for the additional storm drainage and grading improvements. These additional improvements will be completed by the developer. They'll be eligible for reimbursement from the special benefit district after debt has been issued. This approach allows the improvements in the project to move forward quickly. It also allows for the ultimate funding to come from the benefit district. All three of these items are recommended for approval by the city staff.
Thank you, Matt. Any public comment on any of the items? Council, questions?
How did we change the allocation in the past? Isn't this one that we changed from either the number of homes to the square foot, and now it's the square foot to the lot, or hasn't there been?
It was a different benefit district, but we have several benefit districts that were, I believe the benefit districts were created before they started platting the actual properties or developing plans. So they did it on a square foot basis because that's all we had.
Okay.
And now that we're near the end of those phases, we know what the lots are like. It's basically, it's more fair to potential property owners to spread it out evenly throughout.
I see what you do. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so we can start with new business item number 2. Consider adopting an ordinance amending certain proceedings relating to the Hilltop Ridge Phase 1 Offsite Sewer and 167th Street Special Benefit District. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton. We adopt ordinance number 2767, an ordinance amending resolution number 2065 of the city of Gardner, Kansas, and ordinance number 2687 of the city to modify the method of assessment against certain lots, pieces, and parcels of land liable for such special assessments to pay the cost of certain improvements in the city. Hilltop Ridge Phase 1 Offsite Sewer and 167th Street Special Benefit District. City Clerk.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ween,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2767 passes. Do we have a motion for new business item number 3?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adopt ordinance number 2768, an ordinance amending resolution number 2066 of the city of Gardner, Kansas, and ordinance number 2688 of the city to modify the description of maximum estimated cost of and method of assessment against certain lots, pieces, and parcels of land liable for such special assessments to pay the cost of certain improvements in the city. Hilltop Ridge Phase 1 First Plat Internal Improvement Special Benefit District.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ween,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2768 passes. New business item number 4. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Give it to Mark. Okay.
make it the marks.
You're making the Mark's motion. Motion Baldwin, second Ween. We adopt resolution number 2121, a resolution of the city of Gardner, Kansas, approving the execution of an improvement agreement to construct certain storm damage improvements within the Hilltop Ridge Phase 1 Internal Infrastructure Special Benefit District located within the city. Clerk?
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ween,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Resolution number 2121 passes. New business item number 5. Consider approving the city's contribution to health and life insurance premiums for the 2023-2024 plan year.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. At the April 3rd, 2023 City Council meeting, staff provided an update regarding health insurance costs for the 2023-2024 plan year. At that time, the governing body provided consensus for the city to increase its contributions in order to absorb the majority of the cost increases for employees. With this direction, staff recalculated the city's contribution levels as follows. Maintain the city's contribution to the individual high deductible plan at 100%. Increase the city's contribution to the Tier 1 and family high deductible plans from 82% to 89%. And increase the city's contribution to all other plans from 80% to 88%. This results in a combined total city contribution rate of 91% across all plans. With these changes, increases for employees were significantly mitigated, with the highest increases totaling less than $10 per paycheck. This council action formally adopts this contribution strategy, as well as the contribution strategies for vision and dental insurance, which remain unchanged from previous years, at a total estimated cost to the city of $2,967,099 for the 2023-2024 plan year.
Thank you, Amy. Any public comment on new business item number 5? We've discussed this last meeting, but council, any questions?
If we ask questions, that means Amy can't leave, right?
I like she just throws us out here and then see you.
The only thing I would like to add is, while I agree with us absorbing this so that we don't lose employees, and they couldn't adjust for that fast enough anyway, obviously we're going to look at our options in the future, but I would like us to look at this as a special change, not this is the new budgeted item for next year, and hope that we can come backwards on it. Right, so that this isn't our new number that we have to hit every year, this additional amount.
I would concur with Mark on that.
Very good. Okay. Do I have a motion for new business item number 5?
So motion.
I wasn't fast enough. Second.
Motion Ween, second Roberts. That we approve the city's contributions to health, vision, and dental insurance premiums for the 2023-2024 plan year. All dollar amounts are noted in staff recommendation above. 100% for CF 1500 single HDHP and 89% of CF 1500 HDHP Tier 2 and family. 88% contribution to all other health insurance plans, and fund employees' HSAs upfront at $1,500 for single and $3,000 for Tier 2 and family, and contribute to employees' vision insurance premiums at 100% for single and 80% for Tier 2 and family, and contribute 50% of dental insurance premiums. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? New business item number 5 passes. Man, I've got a lot of reading in tonight. Okay, so we'll move to council updates, and why don't we start with Parks and Rec? You know, he wants to jump right in.
Can you hear me? There you go.
Yes.
Okay. Let me try this. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. In regards to the practice fields or game fields at Celebration Park, prior to 2017, 2018, we did allow teams to practice out there. The issues we were running into was with the constant wear and tear. The fields were getting torn up. And so we would have rutted areas, muddy spots, and it affected game plays on the weekends. So beginning in, I think it was 2018, we just asked coaches up front, please do not practice on the game fields. We'll try to find you open green space that you've heard mentioned tonight. Now, you know, depending upon the grade, I mean, obviously when the kids get older, there's more needs for the goals and, lines, things like that. And I understand that we could improve in those areas. And so I actually had a good conversation with Coach Martin, Dustin Martin today. And we looked at some places that we think we could put goals up for those older kids. I have reached out to the school district, and they're going to work with us too on finding those open green space areas that we can maintain, and that not just any open green space, but playable practice areas for teams. And so, with the comments that we received, understanding that yeah, we could do better for practice spaces. We're setting almost 800 kids now for soccer, 79 teams, I think. So those are areas that we need to find some good practice space for them, so that we're not constantly tearing up the game fields.
Yeah. So over by the district office is school property, right? Just whatever direction
South
that is.
of it.
Yeah. And then I don't know Madison very well. And I guess over by Sunflower, the baseball fields, that's all school property as well.
Yes. But there are some of the school areas that are pretty rough. Sunflower, like I think it was mentioned earlier tonight, is rough. Pioneer Ridge is pretty rough, but we've mended that relationship with the schools, and they're wanting to work with us, and I know they've even had goals donated to them over the last year. So it's just identifying those areas and getting the right size for the specific age groups of what those needs are, and identifying those.
But this is a public park, and our park policy says that it's open to the public from, one policy says 6 a.m. to 11, the other says 7 a.m. to 11. How are we stopping people from coming onto a public park?
You're not. We're just asking for
But
their
we're going
help.
to charge our volunteers to use it?
Say that again?
We're going to not refund our volunteer coaches their coach credits to use it when I can use it for free?
It's just a matter of, working with us, because, we can't control who utilizes the park. I understand that. It's not fenced, it's open to anyone. But just, the teams that we have in our leagues working with us and not practicing on the game field, so that way they do have a good product on the weekends.
How bad were they? I mean, were they torn up because people would practice when it was wet, or?
That was one of the main issues, yes.
Because like my son, we practice at some fields that get used a ton, and when it's wet, they don't let them use it, but they're always in great condition, and then they play games there and tournaments there, and I'm just wondering, could we just be more vigilant about, when it's wet, just no.
It's pretty similar to like baseball. We don't monitor all the school fields, baseball fields. Hoping people will see it's probably too wet to go out there and utilize them. And if you do, you tear them up. Tried using the weather line to get that information out too. It's just a matter of, coaches and teams seeing that it's too wet to get out there and not get on.
So I was just going to say, can we add signage to the parks? Because that would be for everybody. As Joe Public, I didn't get the email that says I can't use the soccer fields to practice soccer. So I don't know that I'm not allowed to do it. But if we had signage out there that says, hey, please don't use our fields when there's wet and muddy conditions, I think that solves the problem without telling the coaches they're not allowed to practice on our soccer fields.
We have tried to put up no play signs in the past, but they just get taken out of the ground.
So, to me, this is an issue of soccer was kind of an add-on thing years ago to Parks and Rec, right? Add soccer, sure, great. But the only fields that Gardner really has are baseball. We don't even have basketball courts, right? Those are the schools, right? So what happened was soccer became this, hey, any green space. Well, anybody who knows soccer, as we heard from several people, knows that any good field is maintained as a soccer field, right? It has certain drainage. The drainage is a certain deal, certain grasses, right? So that you don't have the holes and everything else. We don't have those facilities. So one thing that if our partnership with the school continues to go in the right direction, which it sounds like it has been, I would be tempted to ask them if our game field could be their game field, because they're on Saturdays, which they're not using it then. And that would open up Celebration to not be a game field, and now it would be a nice, or maybe not all of them, right? Certain kids might still be playing on some fields. It depends on the number of fields, right? But if you could have certain games played on the high school fields, then it alleviates some traffic on the Celebration fields, and then if they get utilized a little more for practice by Joe Public or soccer individuals, oh well, we can't do anything about it unless we want to invest in soccer fields. So I would go down the avenue of, let's see if we can share a little more on the resources. It's not going to fix everything overnight, and it's not going to solve everything, obviously, because there's only so much space there. But it would at least make it where they have a nice game facility, even if practice is it.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of sharing, my thought about it would be a good relationship, so we could share in the pickleball courts and expansion. So just want to get that out there.
And this honestly this doesn't just affect soccer; it also affects flag football too,
Yeah.
because in the fall season, that park is packed with football and soccer and fall baseball tournaments or whatever the case. But that's the heavy stress part on that is the fall season for sure. So this obviously affects not just soccer but the football teams in the fall too.
So there, I mean, if we could get, maybe mention this, I apologize, but get just some better equipment at some of the practice fields, that would help. Possibly. Right?
Yes, getting goals. That's one of the biggest things. Is what Dustin and I talked about today. Is getting correct goal sizes and field sizes, and actually having playable surface areas like Stone Creek Park. We have goals that are there that are permanent. Trying to identify more areas that are conducive to the proper age groups for that.
And until we get more adequate practice spaces, not punishing our volunteers by telling them they are not allowed to be at Celebration Park when every other member of the public is allowed to be there.
Yes, definitely open to the public. It's just asking those coaches and teams to help us out with that.
I understand that, but the email didn't say, hey, will you help us out? The email said you will lose your coach credit if you are caught out there. I don't like that as a city we spoke that way to volunteers, because without those coaches, we don't have 79 teams.
Sure.
And if we alienate that, we don't have a soccer program, and we don't have a use for our soccer fields.
Well, that solves everything. It's not actually.
Going back to draining the lake.
I know, draining the lake and the
Yeah.
pool and
Plow
getting
out the
soccer.
fields. Drain the lake.
So do we have a consensus on that? As
On.
far as, I mean, we can ask for voluntary compliance, but, we're not gonna reduce the credit. The people that wanna practice there are, they're the ones that are gonna have to play on the field on Saturdays. So, if the game fields aren't as good as what they are with nobody practicing on them, they're the ones that are gonna have to play on them, so.
I would agree with that. I do like the idea of maybe some signage that talks about the wet conditions and not to use them. I mean, I know it might be fruitless. They might get torn down, but I think we need to try.
And even with our park policy that's on our website, it says nothing about wet and muddy fields, and it says inappropriate behavior, but maybe adding that, like, be cognizant of using anything, even our baseball fields and stuff like that, in wet and muddy conditions.
Well, west side is open, and the east or the south side of Celebration is open, but the 4 complex it's gated.
Correct.
Right? So would we have a problem with putting up, I know it's not pretty, but at least temporarily, orange construction netting around the field at Celebration saying, don't go in there? Because then Joe Public's going, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be in there either. Now, I understand somebody could go in there. That's neither here nor there. But at least something to slightly deter versus somebody just walking out there. And at least that's just temporary. It's not, Fencing is not a big deal.
it's still, it's still public property too. I mean, you're taking away the idea that, oh, I can't be in there because.
Well, I get that, but we do that all the time, and I don't mean just us. I mean, I can't go play on the football field at the high school anytime I want.
Well, but yeah.
I can't go on
The trails in Edgerton, I mean, when it rains,
Right.
they close them down.
Now we can have that discussion if that's a whole thing too. I'm open to that. But the pool's not open for me to go to right now.
Well, there's no water in there. You took it all out.
That's true. But I can't go in there and skateboard just because I want to, right? It's a public asset, but you can't just go onto it, right? You can't go onto the golf course when it's closed. At least you're not supposed to, right? So we have all these things. I mean, we already say that you can't be in the park after 11 o'clock at night. Well, why not? What if I want to play night tag? I used to love that. I'd play it now. But I think I can outrun half the cops. But I'm just saying that we already have this issue in some areas, so it wouldn't be the end of the world to block off a section if that's the intended purpose of it.
I wouldn't go that far personally, but
Could we use our rain out line of like, hey,
I think
it
so.
rained last night, and please don't practice on Tuesday?
Again, that,
Like, yeah.
that only goes to the coaches, though.
Well, right.
Joe Public's not going to pay attention to that.
But it's a coach's.
Put it on your Facebook page.
No, I understand the families that pay attention to the sports will, but Joe Public will not. Right? They might go out there and play around with their radio controlled car for fun.
Okay. So consensus?
To not put up a sign or a fence and not take away the coach's credit. Is that where we're at?
Just open it up for practice.
You could.
If we're going to open it up, we're going to have to open it up.
And strongly recommend they don't use it, but we can't, don't use it at all, but not to use it in wet and muddy conditions, but not punish them for using Celebration Park for practice.
I mean, we'll see the wear and tear when it comes fall.
Yes.
I mean, you'll
I'm
see
just
it.
wondering if it's going to be bad. Or do we want to have a consensus to improve our equipment at some of the other locations?
I think that's a separate thing, and that should be done anyway. If we're going to provide this sport as Parks and Rec, then we should be providing adequate facilities.
Right.
So
So there's not enough fields of celebration for everybody.
Right.
You're talking about 79 teams.
Right. So I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe we have to pare it back and we limit the number of teams we have. I hate to do that, but we don't physically have the facilities that are in soccer condition.
But while we build up those facilities, make sure that the ones that we do have remain open. And I agree with building up the practice fields in the areas, because while yes, big kids need goals and lines, but so do the little ones that have never played. They need to understand where to go and where to kick the ball, because come game day, that matters.
I just wanted to add one piece to this. So just because it's public property doesn't mean that we don't have the right to exercise appropriate control over it, to maintain the integrity, the quality of the property. I mean, it is the city of Gardner's property. The city of Gardner is technically, by law, run by you all. Many cities pass park regulations that have all kinds of restrictions in there to ensure that their facilities are maintained, are not damaged. So just know that option is out there for you, and you would be, if you didn't do something like that, you'd be in the vast minority of people, not to not try and protect the assets that you have.
Well, and that's what my point, because we do have a park policy that talks about inappropriate behavior and vandalism and inappropriate activities and no alcohol, no drugs. Like, why not add to not tear up fields when they're wet and muddy?
I don't have a problem with adding that. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to read it, but
No, but
yes, I don't have a problem
We're
putting
not
it.
saying that, hey, it's open, it's a free-for-all, go mudding on our soccer fields.
Right.
But, we want to treat them with respect, but still use them for their intended purposes, which is soccer.
right. I like that, and I like the thought of us building up some of our other practice fields, other fields with goals, et cetera, for all ages, like Casey said, because the small kids need it just as much as the big kids.
And from a maintenance standpoint, yeah, whether it rains or not, we will definitely see wear and tear come this fall. Just from, I mean, think about the number of kids. We're actually down a field right now because we had a truck do donuts on the west side. And so thankfully the school district worked with us and we put in a temporary field at the high school this spring to help us out with our numbers. So I think, to your point, building up our, turf, I'm going to call them playable practice surface areas that we can identify. I think it'll help a lot, and it'll, give the kids better practice space too.
So Celebration is currently listed as a practice location on the list of practice locations?
It is not.
Okay. So I was going to say, let's keep it off. And yes, if somebody still goes out there, that's on there, but it's not one of the ones we're pushing.
So are we gonna recommend that people don't practice there? I guess now I'm circling back around.
I don't think you say you're stopping anything. If you want to go out there, if you're coaching and you want to go to Celebration, go for it. But just like in basketball, we had to sign up for certain facilities to use, right? So sign up for one that's not Celebration. And then if you want to go to Celebration, that's all on you.
And if you go there for practice and there's not an open field, then that's on you too. Like you can't.
Because then you have to fight for it.
Reserve that field for your practice, but if you go there, then you can use it.
What we try to do with, as far as the quote unquote reserving practice times, soccer is a little bit different because depending upon the area, you can fit so many teams depending upon the age group. Like with baseball, we have, Nike, Sunflower, Pioneer Ridge, Trail Ridge, Grand Star, and we actually assign days and times. So that way if Coach Smith and Coach Jones both shows up at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday night, they can pull up the Google Doc. Well, sorry, Coach Jones, Coach Smith has this. And so it's something that, similar to soccer, is coaches find, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Sunflower work for me. Okay, we can maybe fit 2 or 3 teams there depending upon the age group. But if we can, start utilizing, these new areas with specific goal sizes, depending upon what age division you're coaching, I think that'll alleviate it a lot. I really do.
And yeah, like in the future, if we can build up some of those open spaces and make sure that they're adequate practice spots, like let's go for it and let's push those spots. But until we have enough adequate practice spots, we can't close down what we have. And you're right, it is on those teams. If they choose to tear up the fields, then they've got a bad game field to play on. And I would assume most of the people that are participating in Gardner soccer are Gardner residents, and it's their tax dollars that are going to have to go and fix it.
Would you recommend though, more of a first come first serve, or if we're going to allow some practice, would it be better to specifically plan that out?
I wouldn't put it on the dock at all.
Yeah, I would recommend not assigning practices out there because we do have several coaches that we did receive emails, thanking us for sending an email to keep coaches and teams off of there, in showing that we're trying to kind of do our part. And so it's just a matter of getting those open spaces, for these teams that's not rutted up or places like Sunflower, areas that we think are good enough for them to practice on, but not a celebration, just to prevent the wear and tear.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if that was the message in the follow-up email that says there is no credit being removed, that says we highly encourage not to use it, right? Because the number one thing I heard out of everybody, and I know this from knowing a little bit about soccer, was the safety aspect of having the holes, right? So I think every one of those coaches can appreciate that, and they'll go, oh, well, if I can stay off of it, and I tell Joey, he stays off of it, he tells Susie, maybe, not saying they won't get some wear and tear, but maybe more than likely, the majority will stay off. We'll see.
All right.
One more thing.
Yep.
You mentioned Earth Day this Saturday from 10 to noon at the Gardner Greenway. We're still taking signups online. Have our pick up the annual all the trash and have famous hot dogs and a small lunch for everybody. So hope to see everybody out.
Mayor will be there.
Some signups.
Awesome.
Roped in my wife.
Awesome. kids out there too. All right. Gons?
Nothing.
Dave, anything more?
Well, the night tag issue seems to be something of interest. I have nothing tonight.
Do I need a conditional use permit for that?
Depends on if you get caught.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kellen?
Folks have probably noticed there's concrete going in on the next section of the 56 project. Right now, the Moonlight intersection looks to be on schedule for the 3-week closure to be all of it. And then they'll continue down the other 2 lanes of traffic. There will be quite a few disruptions to access to both the side streets there as well as certain businesses. We're going to try to get KDOT and the contractor to maintain those accesses as much as possible, but there's no way to put concrete in without stopping traffic through some of those entrances at some point. So it'll be about 3 or 4 weeks is what I'm being told of intermittent closures. A little patience through that, and we should get to 4 lanes of traffic.
It does seem like this side is going much faster and smoother. What is contributing to that? I mean, because the first side just took forever, and this side, I mean, it really does look like lightning almost.
Yeah, ultimately,
Don't jinx it.
I know, I'm sorry.
Ultimately, all of the delays to the project can be attributed back to the original design errors. Because of that, we kept running into problems with elevations of utilities and other things. Because they corrected all those design errors before moving over to this side, you're seeing the speed at which it should have been done.
I mean, I'm glad it's going fast. It's just night and day almost when you drive by it.
Thank you. Anything further? That's it. Chief Waldeck, welcome. All of our meetings go this long. This is normal.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Very encouraging. I tried to think of a funny joke about the night tag, but I just really couldn't come up with anything. I don't really have a lot. I'm glad to be here. We've had a great first week, and I started having one-on-one meetings with all the police officers, and am really enjoying myself and getting to know everyone.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
City Clerk, Sharon Rose.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Matt?
Nothing tonight.
Amy, this is your
This is my last meeting, so I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunities, and it's been a privilege.
We'll be sad to see you go, of course, and wish you the best. Best of luck.
She's got a Disney smile on.
You don't have to look at those 3 anymore.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, we will be in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
City Attorney?
Nothing for me.
City Administrator?
Yeah, I want to publicly thank Amy for all her contributions. She's been a great contributor to the city, and we're going to miss her both professionally and personally, what she brings to the building. And good luck. We're going to miss you.
Councilman Weed?
I'd also like to thank you, Amy. Pleasure working with you. Also, the idea of Mark being chased by police maybe is not such a bad, a fundraiser.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe for soccer fields, maybe for a spillway.
Oh, now we've done it.
Other than that, no, I'm good.
That's pretty good.
That's good. That was good.
Councilman Roberts?
Nothing really specific, but I know we're like, oh, it's so late in the meeting because we had lots of interaction, but I like that we had lots of interaction. This is what this whole process is for. We want people to come. We want people to express their opinion, email, call. I mean, I don't get that many emails and calls. I like it when people email and call me, and I try to always get back to them. But I like that we had people here and express their opinion. I feel like it's true representation of what it's supposed to be.
Agree, thank you.
I agree. I love that people come out, and whether you agree or disagree with what we do up here, I really like hearing from citizens. So that was really encouraging last week and into this week. And Amy, I am a sympathetic crier, and I can see you over there, so I'm gonna say, without looking at you, that it has been wonderful working with you. You have always been there to answer every question, and just amazing, and you will be very, very missed. I know, I looked.
Anything further?
No.
That was it. Council President?
How am I supposed to follow that?
Right? I know.
You can say something about big shoes to fill like Steve would.
I could do that too. Yeah, but yes, Amy, thank you very much for all your service. I personally, like all the detail you put in, all the numbers. Matt knows how that is. I'm always asking for it, so I greatly appreciate your presentations. And good luck to you. I also wanted to echo Tori's sentiments. The best part of this whole meeting so far, I thought, was all of the support for the coach. Regardless of that whole situation, first I heard of it was email, yesterday, today? And that wasn't even about the coaches, that was about the field, right? But I thought it was awesome that we had that many people come up and say something. It's usually a need. So to have not only people speak, but also to support somebody else, I thought was great. So obviously that's a situation we have to dig into, but I just thought that was great. And all the people showing up for the Fairfield subdivision folks, anytime there's a change in your neighborhood, it brings people to the meeting. Some people are in favor, most people don't like the change, regardless of what it is. So it is good though that they came and they voiced their opinions, and they get to see the full process, and maybe we can come up with a better product for them anyway. So I just wanted to add that on, and they already said it. Are we discussing anything about the coach, or are we leaving that internal? Okay, that's not really a governing body decision, policy. Okay, that's it for me.
And again, Amy, when I first started as mayor, you were the one person that would always tell me no. So I'm glad you're gone. No, I'm just kidding. Can I do this and this? No, you can't do that.
Do we have a replacement for her then?
No, Amy, you've been exceptional, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. And best of luck to you. So, with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.